Coach DeMarco here with another Get Better Basketball Live. And if you're as excited about the Princeton offense as I am, then you're not going to want to miss this episode. Coach Tommy Brumbelow, head basketball coach at Wichita West High School in Kansas, is going to give us a complete breakdown of the entire Princeton offense. You're not going to want to miss it. Another Get Better Basketball Live is up now. Coach DeMarco here with Get Better Basketball Live, and today my guest is Coach Tommy Brumbelow from Wichita West High School in Kansas. And we're going to talk about the Princeton offense today, which is very exciting to me as someone that has a lot of interest in learning about the offense. So, Coach, I'm real excited today to learn more about it. Thanks for joining me once again.
Yeah, absolutely. It's this has been something we dove into hard beginning or towards the end of last season and kind of stuck through it this summer, and we've kind of liked what we're seeing out of it. So it's been a fun process for us as well.
What is it that kind of sparked your interest with the Princeton offense? I know there's a lot of teams that through the years have run it successfully. Georgetown has used it, Nebraska Wesleyan, obviously Princeton with Pete Carrill, and then there's pieces of the offense all over the NBA and college, and it's just highly popular. Don't see it, I think, run in its entirety as frequently now,
Right.
but definitely a charismatic offense. So what is it that sparked your interest in incorporating this with your team?
I'll be the first, and my guys will be the first to tell you too. We've tried quite a few things offensively that on paper look good, and then I get out there and it doesn't necessarily fit. Not the guys, but more of my personality. One of the big things with the Princeton offense that I like is, as you mentioned, it also kind of pulls some modern day schemes into it as well. Like we'll get into some side ball screen stuff. It incorporates a lot of player movement if needed, but also will allow for floor spacing if you've got great knockdown shooters. And then to me, especially at the high school level, incorporating some of those screening actions that you see at a point series or chin series. To me, those are difficult actions to guard, and if run properly, will always introduce some type of advantage for you. So that's kind of what got my attention to it with the point series first, and then our guys took a liking to it. So this summer we really dove into the other two series. So that's kind of the foundation for us.
So you talked a little bit about some of the advantages of running the offense, and I have to ask you, who's kind of been the person that you've looked at? Obviously, we know Pete Carrill at Princeton, kind of the founder and the person who really made this popular. But who's the person that you have gone to, or people that you've gone to, or teams you've watched to really help you learn more about the offense?
The Princeton really started for us. Radius Athletics, Randy Sherman had put out his motion strong stuff that the Milwaukee Bucks had ran quite a bit. And we picked up on we didn't run as a 5-out, we ran it as a 4-out, 1 in, and then basically shifted into that the point over, away, or middle action. But when we really dove into it, what really started with videos from Richmond with Chris Mooney, and then Coach Wellman down at Nebraska Wesleyan University. And then, like you mentioned, heck, watching Miami Heat, there were a ton of Princeton principal actions in there that got a lot of great looks for a lot of great shooters. And so once we kind of studied the offense through watching some videos and breakdown stuff, us coaching staff, we kind of started picking it up and kind of seeing it everywhere. Kind of like that red truck you're shopping for. That's all you see now. So it's those were kind of the influences to begin with. And then now we just kind of we've idled down or closed down our funnel here a little bit because we kind of got the idea, the places we want to go with it. So, but I think on YouTube you can find a full Richmond practice with Chris Mooney running everything, and it's a phenomenal practice to watch. It's a practice environment. Nebraska Wesleyan University, I know they put all their games on YouTube. So you watch full games, kind of watch them flow between offenses. So those are kind of the big impacts for us.
What is it, Coach, that you really like? I know you talked about some of the advantages of running it, but what is it you really like about this offense as it kind of pertains to your team? And since you've been using, I know you said it's just been a short period of time, but in
Mhm.
that period of time, what is it that you've really liked about the Princeton offense, within your team?
I've loved the fact that we can incorporate post play, and it's a post player on ball side block. I mean, a lot of the dribble drive concepts today, you kind of put that post player in the dunker spot opposite the ball, the porch, as Villanova calls it. But we've got a guy that we really want to get the ball inside to, so it's just nice to be able to um, allow him to work ball side block with low series, but then also stretch the floor a little bit, at 15 to 17, 19-foot range when we're in over. I think in the fact that those two things, as we'll see today, just flow within each other, it gives guys kind of habit reads, habit things they have to do that become kind of muscle memory, and then allows them to play the game within a structure too. So those have been the big things. And as I mentioned before, just the fact that the simple actions, no matter how much you practice switching, we all know eventually somebody's going to fall asleep or somebody's going to overhelp or something's going to happen there. So um, those are kind of the positives for us right now.
Coach, before we jump into the diagrams, just a couple of minutes here, I wanted to ask you to just take us through just kind of a brief overview of I know there's the point series and point away and over. What are the different kind of series or actions that you're currently using with your team right now?
So right now we use three series out of it. Obviously, point. We use low, and those are the two that really flow together for us. And then we incorporate chin. Um, Watching everything, if you've got some extremely high level IQ guys, 1 through 12, you can make all three of those flow together, no problem at all. But in our very short experience, we've learned kind of 2 out of 3 work better. As far as when you're talking motion, just free flowing, getting to next concepts within the action, point series and low series complement each other real well. Low series and chin series complement each other real well. So those are kind of the actions we played with. We're hoping to eventually kind of get into a 5-out phase with it too, kind of like what we've seen with the Miami Heat with all the dribble-ats and weak side pin downs and back cuts and so on and so forth. But we'll see how quickly we progress.
So just two more questions, Coach, before we jump into the diagrams. Is there a distinguishing action within, so for the point series, is there something that initiates it versus the low series and versus the chin series? I know we're going to have a chance to look at the diagrams to kind of bring this all together, but just as coaches are listening, kind of just thinking of an overview, is there some action that distinguishes each of those series and how you get into them?
When everybody hears the Princeton, they think, oh God, this is extremely complicated. I don't even want to touch it. Don't want to look at it. When in actuality, what the past tells you what to do. So basically, with the way we start, two slot offensive players and 2 free throw line extended players. If it's a slot to slot pass, we are in point. It doesn't matter. The 4 perimeter players are interchangeable. It doesn't matter who's in what spot. If it goes slot to slot, we are in point. If the pass goes from slot to wing, we are in low series. And those are the 2 cues that we use. And again, with IQ and with development, we'll start to get into dribble entries and false motions and all that. But really, that's the basic foundation of how you can really introduce this offense and your players pick up on those cues.
Just to follow up to that, are those, to get into low or to get into the point series, are there times when you're making calls that we want to be in the point series, or is it kind of free flow? You're taking what the defense gives you, and it could go from slot to wing or it goes slot to slot. Is how much of that is predetermined versus predicated on sort of the reads the players are getting out there?
Everything's free flow. It's all what the defense gives us. In timeouts or dead ball situations, we might say, hey, let's look at this. Obviously, scouting reports will dictate what actions we kind of want to run more that evening versus teams. But it is solely up to them to make that read and get us going. And that's another reason why I kind of like the offense, because it's player led. It's allowing them to play the game and see the game as they're playing, but also kind of gives them a next step to get to. So that way, if we're hung up, we're not relying on a guy just to put his head down and try to blow by 5 defenders.
I have to ask, of those series,
Mhm.
what's been your favorite, or been the one you've had the most fun with, or maybe what's an action, a certain type of backdoor cut or dribble handoff or ball screen? What's an action that you've really liked, or a series that you feel like has been really fun for your team, maybe more so than the others?
For me, it's point away. I really like point away, just because the way teams switch and defend, it's very difficult to defend. And then this year with our big guy inside, he's a great pick and roll guy. He can go up to the rim and get some lobs. So it immediately kind of gets us into a side ball screen action. So again, that's that kind of modern put on it. We have a little bit of action first to make the defense move, and then we get into what we want with that side ball screen. And then probably out of low series, and we'll see it today, we love the split action screens. When we enter the ball to the post, we screen up always to kind of occupy those defenders. And if they get caught sleeping or trying to dig down, hopefully we have a good shooter coming ready to catch one and let it fly. So
I'm envisioning some of these different actions, including what you just talked about. So let's take a look at the Princeton offense in this breakdown.
So again, my name is Tommy Brumbelow. I'm the head boys basketball coach at Wichita West High School in Wichita, Kansas. I'm entering my 3rd year there. And today, Coach DeMarco has asked me to kind of give an overview of the Princeton offense as we run it, because it won't be true Princeton, for the Princeton fanatics that studied it with Pete Carell and whatnot, but there'll be some modifications. I do have my contact information up there for anybody that may have some follow-up questions that we don't answer today. I think one of the goals and duties as a coach too is to share information and help improve anybody that wants to get better. So with that said, let's kind of jump into it. I've got some resources up here that have been influential in my learning of the offense. Randy Sherman with the Radius Athletics, doing much like Coach DeMarco is, helping and mentoring coaches. He's been a big help with simplifying some of the terminology and things that we do. 2 guys that I haven't spoke to personally. I talked to Coach Wellman actually a couple of days ago. But 2 guys that run the Princeton offense at a very high level is Coach Chris Mooney down at Richmond University, and then Dale Wellman at Nebraska Wesleyan University, a Division III powerhouse. I mean, they put up some numbers. And kind of a 4th guy that I've met actually through Randy was Coach V. I'm not even going to try to say his last name here, but he's actually the head boys basketball coach at Cumberland Valley High School in Pennsylvania. And he's ran the Princeton offense for many, many years at the high school level. So that kind of gave me some encouragement when we took on the beast that, hey, high school kids can learn this. He has some of the same difficulties and restrictions that we have in Kansas with the amount of court time we can have in the off season. So to see him be able to implement it and at a very high rate is kind of cool too. So all of these guys you can find on Twitter. If you were to email me or DM me, I'd of course touch base with them first, but I could probably try to get in contact with them. Coach Wellman and Coach Mooney, again, you can find them on Twitter and their emails out there on their school websites. So I would definitely encourage you to YouTube Coach Mooney and Coach Wellman if you're genuinely looking at trying to see the Princeton offense run, because there's a lot of great videos out there. So why do we run the Princeton? I'm kind of ashamed to say it, but in the 3 years I've been a head coach, we've tried 3 different offenses. We've tried the mover blocker. I'm a guy that firmly believes in screening actions, so I knew I wanted screens incorporated and stuff. Maybe I got impatient my first year as a first-year head coach, so we moved on to a little bit of dribble drive stuff. Absolutely did not like it. Not that because my guys weren't capable of it. It's just not my personality. So when it came time to kind of researching some things that had a little bit of movement in it and some screening actions, we actually came across point series and ran a version of it towards the end of last year and had some success with it. The guys really embraced it quickly. So we kind of figured this was something that we wanted to do because it does encompass all those things that you see in modern offenses. You've got back cuts, you've got screening, you could have staggers, you've got the handoffs that everybody's obsessed with today. And it also, you can incorporate post play if needed. Tempo is something that a lot of coaches debate and talk about these days. One great thing I've learned over the last 6 or 7 months, and it kind of made me feel a little silly, was, just because you run fast doesn't mean you have to shoot the ball fast. That, again, makes me feel a little silly, but it's kind of common sense now that I think about it. But again, I've listed the 2 main colleges that you can watch that run this offense: Nebraska Wesleyan University, Division III powerhouse. They put up 90-plus points a game. I listened to his podcast a couple of days ago with Chris Oliver, and they want to get shots up in the first 2 to 3 passes. He really pushes tempo, which was awesome to see. And then you have a team like Richmond that, they will push, but they really try to play through their big guy inside who led them in scoring, and they're very efficient offensively. They were top 30 in the nation in offensive efficiency. So you kind of have that option to get extremely fast, or you could slow it down, walk the ball down, run your sets, execute, or it's not your sets, your actions, and get what you want. The last 2 things up there, it does provide structure. I do believe that when kids don't have to think and the next movement becomes habit, it allows them to play a little more freely. It allows them to play a little more confidently and comfortably. And it's such an offense that just because the defense takes away one action, it opens a door for another. So once you really start to get into it and your guys get comfortable with it, and particularly the passing side of things, you really have an offense that can go up against many defenses. And then finally, it gives the guys some freedoms. Yeah, we try to get the ball to point series, we try to get the ball in low series, but they have the ability to make reads off of screens. And then when they have an advantage within an action, they have the ability to play off that second or third layer defender and take what the defense gives us. So those are kind of the positives for us. If I was to throw a negative out there, it's not that the offense is complicated. It's just the timing of things does take some time. Guys timing back cuts, guys making passes off the bounce. Those are things that you've got to work daily to really get good, or to really reap the benefits of what the Princeton offense can provide to you.
I could just interject for a second. Just 2 points. I love the structure but freedom that you talked about, because I think, it gives you kind of that skeleton of what it's going to look like and where players are going to be, but then the freedom to make different reads and get into different actions. And we talked a little bit about that before when I asked you how you get into, the different series, within the offense. In terms of the timing, which I think is a really good point you brought up. Just a question on what are some of the things you have done as you've started to use this offense with your team? Is there anything that you're doing in order to kind of work on that timing with your players in practice?
So our 10 to 15 minutes of practice, our pre-practice, whatever you want to call it, when guys are trying to get loose, get moving, we typically start with we call them spin layups, but basically backdoor layups where guys are making dribble moves at the top of the key, and then they start dribbling at a guy. And we use cues, making eye contact with the passer and the receiver, so that way we're on the same page. And it's just something that, again, we work every day. The one thing that I have learned watching all the guys that run Princeton, your guys have got to be able to pass off the dribble. That you as a coach have to become comfortable with those one-handed passes, just because that's the only way you're going to get the back door. Because if you don't, he's picked the dribble up. Now you're in a lot of trouble. So that's something that we work. And then, we spend a little bit of time in 4 versus 0, 5 versus 0 scenarios where we really structure what the guys are doing. Typically, that's how we get our shots up for the day. We'll get shots up at all 4 or 5 spots, but we'll run specific actions first. And to me, that's kind of helped with the timing. And then we evolve into the 1 versus 1, 2 versus 2, 3 versus 3, short-sided game stuff that we had talked about a few weeks ago, to where real defenders are out there. So it's all, we'll do the spin layups daily, but we really try to, if we have a weakness out of point low or point away, point over, point under, we'll highlight those for those days. All right. So the basic alignment that we run, we put when we have numbers up here, your 4 guys in the perimeter are all interchangeable. It's however you want to run it. I played at Newman University. I played for Coach Mark Potter. And for my 5 years in college, the 3-man ran left, the 2-man ran right. And that's what I've done ever since. So that's never changed for me. And we always want to bring the big to the ball side block. We are toying with if our 5-man gets the defensive rebound, maybe flowing into a 5-out phase, where there's some actions we're looking at there. I know Coach Wellman said in his podcast with Chris Oliver that he has all 5 guys interchangeable. He teaches everybody every position, so that way they feel the pressure of what passing means and why a guy maybe didn't hit you on time type deal. They all kind of feel that moment. But the spacing for us is pretty simple. We put the slots at the NBA line, or not the NBA line, the volleyball line on the high school court. We literally put X's there, and they are the pro lane line, the NBA lane line width. And then our wing guys are free throw line extended, and they are at the NBA line. We want them off the free throw line. We want them to really make their defender have to make a decision if I'm going to get up and deny, or if I'm going to pack it in, or if I'm going to play conservative, whatever it may be. And the post is always ball side block. Just for information purposes, David Blott has a Princeton video out there on YouTube, and he puts his post player opposite block. And they kind of, when they get into the brush cut action, they block the block screen every time. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But he's one of the few that I've seen actually put the post player opposite of the ball. So, but these are the 4 layers you have, and you don't have to run all these layers to be successful at it. You can run one only. Nebraska Wesleyan, he said numerous times he runs point series 90% of the time, and that's all he runs. Richmond will flow between low, point, and chin quite a bit. And in the NBA, you see a ton of Princeton concepts in the 5-out or open series, whatever you want to call it. So I started today's video with the point series because it's the one that is probably the most complex, if you will, just because it has a multitude of options in it. But the way we start point series, ideally, on any slot-to-slot pass, we are going to brush cut into point. And a slot-to-slot pass occurs between 1 and 4, or whatever the 2 players are in slot. When we talk about the brush cut away, we really want the 1 to cut deep through the paint to hopefully maybe run a little bit of interference on X5, the defender of the 5-man. So that way he can maybe possibly get a clean release or catch at the pinch post area. And then he comes up and the 1-man fills the corner. The 4-man, again, and this is part of the offense that it takes, again, that timing, the reps. This pass is made to the 5 off the bounce. And it's not always going to be that way, but he's so high up that he has to put the ball on the floor to get within that good passing range of the 5-man, and also trigger some actions if the 5-man is not open that we'll get into here in a little bit. A terminology that I picked up from Randy for these 2 defenders, he calls them a seesaw. So as soon as that slot-to-slot pass goes, they kind of act like a seesaw. They just interchange spots. 5-man lifts, 2-man sinks to the corner. We want him deep corner because a lot of times we'll see that defender try to creep up off the two-man, maybe back to the pass or something of that nature. We always teach our five-man outside pivot foot, outside target hand. So the best way I can describe that right now, he's on the right elbow. So he's going to be strong-armed on his defender with his right arm, and his left hand is going to be his target hand for a bounce pass from the four. We preach go meet it. So when he go meets it, we want him to catch that on a left foot pivot. We toyed with that a ton this summer, but the reason being is regardless of whatever three actions occur, over, under, or away, he can easily reverse pivot and see the floor. He can face up immediately and see the floor. We don't ever want him to turn his back to the middle or turn his back to the basket. So we've had a lot more success of left foot pivot, swing it through, get it to my right pocket, and then see the actions.
That's a great point for players or for coaches watching, as he catches at that elbow area, using that reverse pivot, he's opening up to the floor now. And also, I think with reverse pivots, clearing out a lot of space.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess two questions here, but the first one I'll ask in terms of pivot. So on the other side of the floor, will they use their right foot and they'll reverse pivot on that side of the floor as well?
Yep, right. So if we were to catch at the left elbow with the five, it would be right hand target, right foot pivot, and then he would sweep through, kind of step his man off a little bit, and then step to wherever the actions are. And to your point was, I too feel like reverse pivots clear more space. It gets your defender off of you. If when you make it deeper in the state or you play really good teams, they really start to scout. If they figure out that you always pivot away from the basket and they just chest to chest you real quick, your guy could fall over, be off balance. Of course, he could always rip and go, but we prefer the reverse pivot style. So,
and one of the things too, just thinking about like the skills you teach your players, it has to really, if you're running a certain type of offense as a coach, you're thinking about player development. If you're running this offense and you're going to use, exchange pivot feet depending on the side of the floor, then you have to really work on that with your players and you're practicing that. Whereas, some other offenses, coaches might use a permanent pivot, right. And that's something you're working on. With dribble drive, I got away with more of a permanent pivot foot for my players, and that's what I taught them for the most part, unless they were down in the post area. But for Princeton, just seeing this, I'm doing what you're doing. I'm going to have them reverse pivot, clear out space, and open up to the middle because there's a lot of catches. And what it looks like is the elbow area, which is my second question. Is there a specific spot? Like, do you put an X on the floor for that player who's coming up and catching that? I think they're the five in this diagram. Do you put an X on the floor for them, or can they catch at the three-point line? Do they have to catch at the elbow? How much variation is it in where they catch on the floor?
We tell the five to go meet the pass. We don't ever want a situation where, he's sitting here at the elbow and he's, for lack of better terms, trying to post up his man at the elbow to catch. So at that point, we'd either tell the four man, hey, you need to run spin, or the five man step out to the 3-point line. We'll put a guard here at the 5 spot too. And we let him kind of stretch all the way out. So that way, when that overaction comes, again, if they fall asleep on a switch or something, he has the ability to shoot the basketball. To answer your question, no, we kind of let that 5-man catch wherever he feels he can catch it. Once the ball is into the 5, and this kind of becomes the complexity of the point series, the passer has his 3 options. He can go over the 5-man or over the ball. He can go under the ball for a basket cut, or he can go away from the ball for a screen. And those are really the 3 options here. Another reason we teach him to reverse pivot and face up, because if that 4-man goes middle or away, we've got to be able to see that action. So he needs to be able to clear some space, keep his guy off of him, and then if his man pressures him, hopefully blow by him and go get a layup. So Those are the three options out of point series. There's a fourth one, but it's kind of a counter, and we'll talk about it at the end of this one here, or at the end of these slides. Point over. Again, this is something that if point series intrigues you, I would definitely encourage you to start with Nebraska Wesleyan University on YouTube. There's 100 videos out there. They've got whole bunch of game clips, and they run, again, 90% of point series. So we have a few options here. The first one we call a throw and go, where whoever gave it to the 5-man, and in this case would be the 4, we tell him, hey, we know your defender sagging off you or something like that. We want you to outrun your pass and hopefully get a handoff to get downhill. Maybe your man tries to jump it late or something and gets caught up in the mix. But we really want him to outrun his pass, kind of get the handoff from the 4-man, and then hopefully play kind of a 2-man game here with the 4 and the 2. Very rarely do we ever get that. Teams switch things. Teams sag off of the 5 really hard. Rarely do we get that. What we did start to see a lot more of is teams will try to go over the handoff. So we'll actually curl the 4-man to the block and kind of lead him with a dump down pass. Again, another great term that Coach Wellman has said with Nebraska Wesleyan. He calls his passes the midnight passes because they're always open late. And he wants his guys to kind of stay with it until midnight. And then if it's not there, let's go a different direction. I would say majority of the time, your guy's probably going to cut right off of this and not even get a handoff from the 5. And this is where the great actions occur for us. The 4-man would come over the top of the 5, and he is going to set a screen for the 2-man in the corner. And the 2-man has 3 options. He can reject it immediately, not even use the screen. He can single curl it, which means curl just the 4-man. Or he can come off the 4-man and off the 5-man's handoff, which is known as the Chicago action, where you got a screener and then a dribble handoff from the big. I really love single curls. Like, I think it's, even if you switch it, it's extremely difficult to guard. We like the rejects. Of course, we come off these hard. We're looking to score. We're being aggressive in the Chicago look. But I really think the single curl action is something that we could have a lot of success with this year. The screener himself, whatever the guard in the corner does, which in this case is the 2-man, the 4-man will do the opposite. So if the 2 was to reject or single curl, the 4-man's coming back to the basketball. Somebody has to come back to the ball. If the 2-man uses it and kind of continues his way off the handoff from the 5, we teach a short roll. We have the 4-man kind of duck right about into that dunker spot area just off the block, 3 to 4 feet. And then if he doesn't get it, we have him field back to that corner. We don't have them sprint through all the way just because right now it's too much congestion. I did see, again, watching the Miami Heat run this a little bit, they'll actually run the 4-man to that opposite dunker spot and then run kind of a 2-man game on the strong side. So that's things you can toy with there as well. The same thing if our 2-man was to reject it or single curl it, we kind of say, hey, man, if you don't get it by the basket, you got to come back out to ball side corner. And it's an awkward cut. So that might be something we change once we get more back into our season, back on the court with the guys and see how they adapt and do it. Because we don't want them thinking too much, and we don't want that situation where, man, he's wide ass open, but he stopped his cut and the 5-man turned it over. So,
Coach, are there times when you will call point over because you want to see this action run with your team? Are those really would those be exceptions if you did do it? Or is this, that slot to slot pass is happening and then, your player is kind of initiating either going over or away or under, whatever it might be, or are there times where you're calling it?
No, we let them initiate all of it. This summer we yelled point away a lot, just because we ran point over every time, and I got tired of seeing it. Can we work the rest of the offense? But outside of that, we let them do their thing. In timeouts or dead ball situations, if we got a really good shooter in this ball side corner, we'll tell them, hey, man, they're face guarding you. You need to reject that first one, or you need to curl it and take the switch with you. But outside of that, we trust what we work every day in offense, and we trust the reads the guys make out there. So
is there an initial read, as that pass goes across, from slot to slot? Is there, and then, it comes into the 5, is there an initial read, for that 4 player that would tell them they should go over, they should go away? Is it kind of, if the defenders, where they're located, or what is it that might give them an indication which action they should initiate?
The 4-man's going to read his defender. If the defender is really well coached and he jumps to the ball immediately and kind of gets in between ball and his man, we're probably running under, or we're going to run away. We want him to go opposite and make his man now chase him. And now they got to communicate defensively and hopefully perfect a good switch or fight through a screen, whatever it may be. If he was to play him straight up, and I think that's more what teams started to do to us, was just play us, hey, 4-man made the pass, I'm going to stay between you and the basket. More times than not, the guard's going to go over the screen just because that's what they naturally are gravitated to the ball. But outside of that, he is reading his defender. That is his goal and his job.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I think as coaches are watching this and kind of thinking about where this could fit in with their team, just thinking about some of those details. And I think as players do it, they're going to be reading and reacting. It's going to be a really nice flow to this offense.
A simple drill we do, put a coach at the elbow. We go offense and defense here. We throw in the post. We throw it to the coach at the pinch post. We tell defense, hey, make an obvious read. And then the offense makes its cut, and typically we'll get a layup out of it, kind of start practice again, getting them warm. If he jumps way over, we go over, get the handoff. If he tries to jump between ball and man, we basket cut, get that midnight pass, and score that layup. So, again, just simple things to kind of teach the guys to slow down and read their defender versus just, chasing the ball or gravitating to the basketball.
That's a good mental warm up too. They're getting their layups in, but they're making their read too. So that's a cool thing to do.
Yep. So that's point over. Again, out of point series, over is the more complex given the screening options it has within it. This diagram here, I kind of just threw in to kind of teach or demonstrate how we would continue it if the 2-man comes off the handoff and gets it from the 5. We tell the 1 and the 3, hold the sideline. Do not move. Hold the sideline. About the only one that we give a read to is the 3-man in this case. If his defender completely sells out in a situation where we get an easy back cut, we'll let him go. But if his defender sits right here at the nail, well, we want that ball kicked out, and now we're playing 2-on-1 with the 3 and the 1. So very rarely do we teach him to back cut that if 2-man is in attack mode. And again, this is one of the timings and the read parts of the offense. Let's say the 2 came off, and sorry, let me slow back down here. Anytime the 5 gives the handoff, we automatically roll with him. And in this situation, we treat anybody in the ball side corner, we lift him up. We don't want his defender to be able to stay down here and tag the 5-man or play cat and mouse between these 2 and cover both. So if we have somebody in the ball side corner on any handoff or any ball screen, we always lift them out of that corner. So the way the offense can keep going is, first, the 2-man could actually keep it, bounce it out here to the point spot, and really stay in a 3-man game here. The 5 could stay, the 4 could go to the corner, and these 2 just stay on their little islands over here. We don't like that. We don't want our guys caught up in just 3-man game actions unless we have something specifically that we want out of it. So we teach them, get downhill and kick it. Or if you can't get downhill, let's get a ball movement And then basically the three guards on this side would interchange. The two would cut through the corner, one would lift, and then the three-man kind of becomes that point guy in the point over action. I did put his dribble this way specifically because you're not able to get into point if the three-man tries to get downhill and attack again. I mean, if he's getting downhill and attacking again, then you're in your read and react principles of what you teach your defense. In order to get in the point, he's got to get above that elbow so he can get a good entry pass to the five-man. One of the second option out of point series is we call it point under or a blast cut. It's where maybe the four-man's man jumped too much to the ball in this situation, and we think we can beat him in a foot race to the basket. Again, bounce passes are nice, but this is probably going to be more an over the top depending on how the five-man's defender plays. This is something that we don't run true Princeton style on. The true Princeton style actually will bring the two out of the corner and screen for the four-man to come back out and around. We discovered that takes entirely too long, and our five-man is kind of on an island by himself. So we basket cut, and if we can't throw it, we're immediately into a dribble handoff with the two-man. So, again, we faced up to the middle. We didn't get it. We're going to rake the guy's eyes with our elbow, take one power dribble towards a two, and he's coming off of a handoff. I failed to mention the first three slides, but again, the first two frames here. We have our slot-to-slot pass. We have our brush cut. We have our seesaw action. And then we have our dribble over to get into point. So, again, it's all triggered off of that slot-to-slot pass that gets us into point. If you've got a great shooter at all five spots, you could probably screen in with the four-man and get them there. But it took too long for the four-man to basically run a big circle for us. So, or three or the one. So we modified it a little bit to fit our needs.
Are there other teams that will do that as well, Coach? Is it a mix of teams that will screen, teams that will do it this way, or did you kind of just take this and put a tweak in that works best for your team?
We tweaked it this way. I'm not going to say nobody ever has. I know Nebraska Westland, they screen in. He really likes to screen in right here and then maybe get a slip. But, yeah, that's something that maybe again, I can't say no one ever has, but I haven't seen a ton of it. Unless, the two-man just sees his man sitting down here too much, but most teams will kick corner and knock down that three. So that's our point under series. The last option out of an elbow entry out of point away is point away. So, again, we have our slot-to-slot. We have our brush cut. We have our seesaw action, and we've given it to the five-man. When the passer goes away, we are setting a screen away for that top guard, whoever it may be. We've put the rule in, and you'll see it some way with teams. At the NBA level, you see it as a read, but the three-man has two options. He can reject the screen or he can curl the screen. That's his only two options. And the reason being is everybody falls in love with coming back to the basketball, sprinting off that screen and trying to come off the handoff. And that's not bad action. That's not a terrible action. We just think that three-man's cut is going to vacuum in other defenders. And that might lead to a standstill open three in the corner for our one-man. It might lead to an easy post-up for the three-man or a back cut or a layup for the three-man. So we teach him you reject it or you curl it. And then he finishes cut out to the corner. The two-man would then lift. Our four-man pops as soon as he sets that screen. We kind of want to time the screens, kind of like you see the illegal pick plays in the NFL. We kind of want the guys on the move. And we do get moving screens called when the guy tries to curl us. But we try to encourage the reject and the four kind of just slip and pop immediately. Because, again, when teams start switching that, we want to throw off their timing a little bit. We'll see if we continue that once we get into the actual season with real officials and guys that look at illegal screens a little more than what we see in the summertime. But we'll go from there. As soon as the pass is made from the 5 to the 4, so he couldn't hit the 3-man on the reject or the curl. He couldn't kick it to the 1-man in the corner for a catch and shoot 3. We made the pass to the 4. He immediately sprints into a ball screen. And this is just your basic side ball screen action here. 5-man will roll, 4-man's trying to get downhill, 1-man lifting from the corner. We could even run this again. The fun and the uniqueness out of the Princeton is the 5-man. Let's say X4 is defending the 4 really well. Well, we could dribble at and back cut the 4-man. So there's another layer in there if they switch things perfectly. What you'll see Richmond do a lot out of point away is they'll play the opposite direction. So instead of the 5-man coming back to the 4, the 5-man will actually spin out and do dribble handoff with the 2-man on the weak side, more technically strong side because the ball's over there. And it kind of catches defenders off guard because they're out there hugging a little bit. But Richmond runs a ton of that. They run a ton of fake to the 4, spin back to the 2-man, and run dribble handoff with the 2. If we were to dribble at the 5, the 5 was to dribble at the 4, and the 4 back cut and got out, the 5-man will just continue his handoff with the 1-man. Or if he's good enough to put it on the floor, he would try to turn the corner and go play basketball. But this is the base action that you try to get out of point away. And again, you can run any variation. You could give your 3-man the full read you want. He can go under, he can reject the screen, he can curl the screen, or he can come all the way off and get the handoff from the 5. It's just up to what you think your team will be more successful at.
You guys ever, just looking at, I guess the 1 in the corner might prevent this a little bit. I'm wondering how much of an impact their defender has on, if the 3 rejects and cuts through, is the 1's defender, involved in that at all. I guess that could open up a skip to the 1 though,
Yep.
from the 5. But I'm also wondering, and again, the 1's defender might put a damper on this, but I'm seeing as 4 steps back out to the ball, that they could then almost, if their player overplays it, they can almost have an option to make a back cut. You run the action back to the 4 a couple times. And have you seen that happen? Any teams that are doing that? Or is it more typical just to throw to the 4 and get into the ball screen action?
The back cut you get against the aggressive teams, and running point away more this summer, we didn't see it a ton because everybody sees screen. Coach tells me I got to stay between ball and man and got to help, or I got to switch it or whatever it is. But if they get crazy aggressive, we'll back cut him, and then we lift the 1 out of the corner immediately because what happens is X1 is now stuck. He might have played the first back cut right, but the odds of him not selling out on the second one are slim. And then we'd lift him immediately, and hopefully we got a good shooter coming in for a catch and shoot 3. Or if he can't shoot it, the 5 will chase into a ball screen, and we're just in our side ball screen actions.
One other question, Coach, just looking kind of coming from a defensive lens here on these last couple of questions, but thinking about the 2, the first diagram, that's the typical kind of with the slot to slot pass, and the 1 is brush cutting through, and we have that seesaw action.
Mm-hmm.
Are you seeing, or in film, do you see teams that hold that 2's defender? Not sure how to describe it, but almost have him stunting to kind of take away that pass to the 5. And is that, I know there's a spin action involved.
Yep.
So would that be, is there a read to the 2 off of that, or does that just initiate the spin action? Just I'm just thinking creatively as a defensive coach, if there's a really great Princeton offense team, what can I do to kind of try to put a damper on some of the things they want to do? And I'm thinking the great thing about this offense is there's always a counter to what defenses do. So I'm just curious if that's something you've seen or heard of before.
So we've we've had two's defender, X2, stop at the kind of, I don't know, just off the elbow area, right behind the 5-man, and try to come in and back tip that pass a little bit. They'll get it the first time. It's hard to pick up because not a lot of teams run that action, so you can't really scout a team if they're doing it. But the second time he tries to do that, we're going to zip that sucker to the corner and we're going to bang a 3. Or we're going to back cut that 2-man down into here and there's nobody helping. But the main counter that we run, if we never feel comfortable with the elbow entry, we call it spin. To where if we see too many defenders or too many congestions, basically the 4-man is going to change directions and go to the opposite side of the floor. So that's what we call spin. I know Coach V, the head coach down in Pennsylvania, he calls it reverse. I don't like that terminology. Yeah, you're reversing the ball, but again, it just didn't fit my personality of reverse. I wanted guys, I don't know. But the issue we're running into now is guys are legitimately spinning every single time. And it's a great visual cue, but realistically, all the 4-man has to do is change directions. His job is to change directions and dribble right at the 2-man's defender. Wait a minute. How did I get the 2 over there? Did I flip-flop them? Oh, I did. Yeah. Sorry, I flip-flopped the 2 and the 3 on these 2 diagrams. The 2 is going to back cut for us. Eventually, we'll get into it where if teams really sag us the second time around, we'll let him come off the handoff himself. But he's going to back cut himself, and then we're into the BYU pistol action. The guards are running a handoff, and our 5-man's coming over here for our spread ball screen look again. Of course, the 5-man can slip it. We can rescreen it if guards go under too much, whatever it may be that you see out of your spread ball screen stuff. But, again, we dribble hard at the 2-man. This is something that we work every day, throwing that one-handed pass right off the Achilles of this X2. Or if we can't throw it, we just keep it alive and go to the 1-man for the handoff. We don't like to jump stop here and pick up that dribble because if we can't hit him on the back cut, X1 can get a lot more aggressive defensively, and now we're in a little bit of a scramble mode. So we're hoping that back cut here, if he's not open, it's because X1 is sitting somewhere on that left block, kind of sagging in a little bit. Now he's going to be late when we run our dribble handoff ball screen action.
Coach, I know the first read is that back cut from the 2 on the spin action. If that defender, or you play against teams that are a little more cautious with getting back cut and he sags a little bit, can that 2 hold and just get a dribble handoff from the 4 and then the ball screen from the 5? Or is it an automatic when you're in spin, he wants the back cut? And maybe not even specific to you guys, but just thinking about this offense as a whole, are there any times when in spin action where that 2 might get the dribble handoff as opposed to the 1 getting it?
I think that it leads to the 2 points there, actually. Again, if we see if you're going to play so far off that the back cut's taken away, yeah, we're going to make a minor adjustment at quarter, next dead ball. Hey, 2-man, come off the ball screen. Don't back cut it. But what teams actually do, and you'll see this a ton with Nebraska Wesleyan, and I think Richmond does it a little bit as well. I know Coach V up in Pennsylvania does. If you sag so far off of me and they back cut, they'll actually post up to 2-man. Because you've given up all that ground, and just a quick little sit or stop and reverse seal pivot, and the 4-man will try to throw it in, or even the 1-man will, just depending on the timing of it all. Coach V up in Pennsylvania, he's got a 6'7" kid that he plays on the perimeter. So that's kind of what he does all the time is back cut and seal, back cut and sit down on and get big, get tall. So that's kind of the 2 counters there. We haven't toyed with the sit and seal yet. We do have some bigger guards ourselves, but our goal right now is to kind of get used to the action of back cutting, go dribble, handoff. But to answer your question, yes, eventually we too would, hey, two-man, make the read. If he's going to play 6 feet off of you, come off the handoff and pull the sucker. Hopefully you got a good look. So that sums up point series. I wish it was 10 minutes and the guys boom knew it all, but it does take some time. We break up early in the season. We spend 1 day per series. All of our breakdown drills, all of our shooting drills come out of one specific series within point before we combine them all together. And we actually start with teaching low series first because it helps with our transition flow, our transition game a little bit better than point does. But that's point series for us. So the other major one that we run as far as a fluid motion and the continuity of the two offenses is low series. And low series is triggered anytime we throw a slot pass to the wing. Anytime slot passes goes to the wing, we are automatically in low. Instead of the one brush cutting, he actually just cuts away. The four-man would fill the point spot up here, kind of split the difference between the two slots. He's still on the volleyball line. We don't want his man way down in here defending. And if his man does go sag on the post, it's a quick pass, step into three-point range, and let it fly. So on the entry pass to the five, if we can get it into the five-man, the action that we run is the split screen. We will bring the two-man into that elbow area. We try to keep him above elbow area. So in this diagram, we'd want his right foot no lower than free throw line extended. And then we're bringing the four-man off of his screen. And the reason we run that is we want these two defenders completely occupied. Teams are going to scout us enough. They're going to know that we run this action. They're probably going to switch it a lot. But at least they're paying attention to these two, and our five-man has a little bit of space to work. But if you fall asleep and you double, we always have a basket cutter, and we have somebody filling back to the basketball. To make sure things continue to flow and we have good spacing, as the four-man creeps down to get ready for his screen, the three-man lifts up to that point area, and the one-man would then lift out of the corner, and that's where we end up with a two guards weak side, our guard at the top of the key, volleyball line, and then our four-man is still free throw line extended. We do allow the four-man here to reject the screen. So if he knows teams are switching or cheating it bad, he can walk down in here and then boom, all of a sudden make a basket cut himself. The two-man would just fill back out. He does the opposite of what the cutter does. And we always tell the screener the cutter is right. I don't care if he made the wrong read or not. The cutter made his decision. You have to do the opposite of what he does. And we see a lot more of our guys actually rejecting it and the two-man filling back out. We had an issue early in the summer where the two-man would pop back to the top of the key real quick. Well, that's not good because now we got the three-man filling up too and our spacing's all jacked up. So at any point, any defender over helps. Again, this is why we reverse pivot and face up to the middle. If X1 comes down in here and digs too much, we'll skip it out. Hopefully we got an advantage on a three-point shot or a +1 to the two in the corner. If the five-man was to pass back out to the four, we'd stay in low series. Hopefully we can get a re-entry pass. If the five-man was to snap pass it to the three, we would flow immediately into point. He would just follow us pass, and we'd have a nice little seesaw here. It's kind of – I'm trying to think of a good way of explaining it. Since we've already made our cuts and we're kind of out of our slot, wing alignment, when the three-man is in the point by himself, when he's one above the free throw line extended by himself, it automatically triggers point series. I should have probably put a video clip in here because it flows well. It's not overly complicated. Just snapped it back to the top. He'd follow, and he would sink, and we would stay in the point. If the three-man, for whatever reason, was to dribble over to the slot, well, then the one man will just lift and we'd square it back up and kind of go reset it. So like everything in Princeton, there's counters to everything. So if we can't enter the ball to the 5-man, and we try our best to incorporate Greg Popovich's 1 second rule. You either drive it, shoot it, or pass it. We don't want guys staring at the post player for 2 to 3 seconds. It just freezes everything up and it delays everything. So if I'm gonna go back a screen here, before the 2 enters it, he always has the option. If the 4-man popped back out and got the ball back, he'd always had the option to reverse the ball to the 3 himself and go directly into point. So it could be done with a pass as well, is what I'm trying to say. Typically, we do it off of a dribble, and we try to teach first dribble, second dribble rules. If the 2-man bounces at all, unless he is turning the corner, unless he's got an advantage on his man, any bounce, the 4-man is automatically cutting. And we never get it. I'm not going to say we won't, but really we want him to cut as hard as he can to kind of bring in the 3-man's defender, bring in the 1-man's defender, kind of be that vacuum cutter a little bit. But by that 2-man second bounce, we expect the 2-man and the 3-man to be squared up top, ready to go for our next slot-to-slot pass, getting in the point. And of course, I say 2 dribbles. It might take 3. It could take 4, depending on your personnel and your talent level. But the key is, as soon as that 2-man puts that ball on the floor, 4-man's got to get out. He can't sit there and wait on 3. We don't want him sitting there. He has got to go, so that X3 defender kind of gets caught up a little bit, and it opens up a nice reversal pass for us. I put in, so if we're slot-to-slot pass, we're in point, which is what you're going to see here. Slot, brush cut away, 5-man lifts. But I put nice, big, and bold here. The 2-man has to keep his dribble alive. This pass to the 3 has to be off the bounce. If he picks it up, he's kind of out here in no man's land. Yeah, you've got good spacing at the volleyball line, but now you've got to flood everybody the ball, and you're getting out of what you're trying to get action-wise. So just one of the points I like to keep making about it is you've got to become comfortable as a coach and a program of making passes off the dribble. They can't be lazy. You've got to make good ones. We ripped a freshman pretty good this summer when he made a very, very lazy pass, and he knew it was coming too. So just one of the points I like to point out there.
Coach, in the point series, or just anytime you go to the action where there's going to be that slot-to-slot pass, if they overplay that pass, for whatever reason, they're just trying to make you uncomfortable, assuming that 3 is probably going to, in this instance, if it goes from 2 to 3, 2's cutting through. Let's just say that they overplay that and 3 makes a back cut. Would 2 and 3 then kind of naturally exchange spots? 2 would then throw to 5 and then initiate an action, or is there some read or something off of that? If teams do, I'm assuming they probably don't want to overplay against this offense a ton because you're going to get back cut. But just thinking situationally in the game, if there is an overplay on that 3, and 2 can't get them the ball and they cut out of there and they're not open, whatever, there's help. What's that next step look like? Is 2 throwing the ball into 5, or what do you guys typically do?
So there's 2 options there. The 2-man could, because you got to envision the ball should be in the 2-man's left hand here. He hopefully is not dribbling towards the middle with the ball on his right. So he could easily take 2 big retreat dribbles, kind of square his defender up and come back into the 5-man, just like you said. Typically what we've done, even if we're on a dead ball and running point, if they ever overplay this, the 1 and 3 just exchange. So he would back cut. The 3 would then come up. Depending on how fast the 2-man is going, it could be a dribble handoff with the 1. It could be a quick pitch to the 1. And then the 1-man would kind of circle in and be our point guy. That's how we've done it this summer. We've had a lot of success with that, actually, because he's back cutting. The 3-man would back cut so far from the basket. Again, that every program teaches some type of help here, some type of slow the cutter down, whether you're pack line, whether you're true pressure man. X1 is going to be somewhere near this elbow if he's doing what he's supposed to be taught to do. So those would be our two counters in that situation. We don't script it. We just point out you've got both options. If the two man was to kind of retreat dribble and start to square it up, and the one man was coming, we would just tell him hold the sideline, space away, let the two man run point. But in that aspect, I try not to when guys basket cut, I kind of try to hopefully let them flow into what feels natural. Just because the offense is kind of wrinkled at that point, the habits that we're used to aren't there at that moment. So I don't want them to be sensory overload. Oh my God, he back cut now. What do I do? Well, go make a play. A lot of teams, not necessarily Princeton teams, but they'll back cut that. Well, you got a nice little double gap here for a second. Maybe you draft dribble off of them or something of that nature. So again, that's where you could take the offense and emphasize it any way you want. We do run 2 to 3 sets, and all of them are basically starting with an overplay back cut to where we can get a triple gap drive. Low and point are what we run as our base offense. That's our continuity. We'll never call anything. Guys know they're in low or chin. And you could do low chin, and you could even do chin point. I think it gets a little tricky there, and I'll explain why. Chin series, we run dead balls, timeouts, or if it's shit's hit the fan and guys are out of control, we'll yell chin just to get everything back under control. And I like chin. Chin is the one for me that if you're really overplaying us, we'll probably go to it a lot just because it automatically pulls the 5-man to the elbow. He's never low. So you've got back cut city here. Even if the 5-man's man sits down here, kind of like the NBA zones or whatever, well, we have a 5-man that can make a play. So chin is triggered with a slot to slot pass. Again, this is a dead ball for us, so we would not run this within our transition offense or anything like that. When the 2 makes the pass to the 4, our 1-man is going to sprint off a back screen for the 5. And depending on the athleticism of your 1-man, you could potentially get a lob here. It could be a bounce pass to him, whatever it may be. If you got a nice big 1-man, or again, all these guys are interchangeable. Maybe a quick little post up. We don't want him hanging around too long, but he's going to get back out to ball side corner. As soon as the 1 clears the 5-man, the 5 is coming in and kind of setting a fade screen, flare screen, drift screen, whatever term your program uses. And we encourage hitting that 2-man kind of on the move, because as soon as he catches it, the only thing I want him thinking is runway drive, because his man's going to be hung up. If his man goes under the screen, he might be able to catch and shoot. He might still be able to go. It just depends on the caliber of your players. If his man sags too much under it, we have a rescreen action where we'll come right back to the basketball real quick and hopefully get a nice look. But after the 5-man sets that drift screen, flare screen, fade screen, whatever your terminology is, we like him to short roll it, slip it, just because if his man jumps it or over helps, or if they try to switch it, maybe we have a mismatch that we like. The goal, again, is to get that ball handler downhill, and you got a 2-man game on the weak side. If the 2-man does catch it clean and he's able to get downhill, now we've got a 2-man game with the 3-man and a 2-man. The 5-man could roll it for a weak side lob if we wanted to, but that's kind of that's the 2 actions out of chin series. The reason I don't want to run chin series and point is because I don't want my 5-man right here confused on this slot to slot pass. I don't want him sitting here thinking, or I don't want my guard confused. I don't want him thinking, hey, I'm supposed to get the ball at the elbow at the pinch post because it was a slot-to-slot pass, but I didn't get it, so he forgot the screen. He forgets everything that's going on. Or I don't want the two-man to go so fast where he caught it. He goes, oh, yeah, we're in point, and the five-man's getting ready to set that back screen, and we have miscommunication on the pass. So we won't run chin and point series together. Richmond, the way they flow out of spin series, they actually incorporate that drift screen. Instead of the dribble handoff ball screen, they pass it and they'll drift him back. It's kind of hard to, I could go back a diagram, but that's the only way I've really seen it incorporated with all three offenses. Again, most teams will run chin or low series because it's pretty simple depending on where the big man is, or they'll run low and point because, again, it's easier read for that five-man to make. Keeping chin going, it's let's say the two-man came off of it and the four didn't throw it to him, the pinch post wasn't open, and the four-man couldn't get rid of it. All he's got to do is dribble lift out here to the slots again. The three-man would lift to the slot, and we're running the action the opposite direction. For pass, it's passed. Four-man cuts off the back screen, and then it would be the three-man off the drift screen. And again, depending on how X3 plays that, he could check mark it, he could curl it, he could keep drifting with it. The one-man's kind of make a read too. If he sees the three curl it, he's obviously going to want to lift a little bit. If he sees the three-man maybe coming off of that drift a little wider, he's probably going to want to stay a little more in the corner so his man don't interfere. That's just timing and reps on it. So that's how you keep the continuity going. Chin is something that we run with our freshmen because it's easy. It's not overly complex. And then we could immediately, if they pick up on it quick enough, we could immediately teach low series to go along with it. And then point series is typically what we spend. Hopefully what we'll spend is from freshman, your sophomore summer when you're with us and you kind of know our summer expectations as far as attendance and whatnot, to where you can start to learn the third layer of it.
Coach, just one of the questions I was actually going to ask, I appreciate you mentioning that at the lower level. So you guys start with the chin series into low and then point afterwards. At the varsity level, is there a teaching progression? Will you start with chin as well and work your way through, or do you start with the point series with the varsity level? Because hopefully, especially as you build a program, they'll already have experience chin and low at the lower levels. But I guess I'm thinking, coach that's new to it, like you were last year, did you start with chin or did you start with the point series as you were first incorporating this with your team?
We started with point because our group last year, we had a couple really good perimeter shooters, and we wanted those rejections, those single curls. We wanted teams to get confused on all those switches. We actually, for this year, we haven't even put chin in yet. We start practice November 16th. Probably the second week into practice is when we'll introduce chin. Because chin for us will be, again, that dead ball situation. Maybe we don't even run it a ton, but I want to have it because I do like how high everybody is on the initial alignment. You get more back cuts at it, and things of that nature. So that's kind of the way we've taught it. I know guys that I've talked to at the high school level have taught chin only. I know some that don't even introduce point series at all. So it's just your level of comfort and your level of teaching that really dictate it. But I think for us, because we don't have a feeder school, we don't know what kids are coming from where, with what background IQ. Chin to me is probably the easiest to run because it can be a continuity. So the guys can as freshmen get in the panic mode, they can go to the next step of the offense. But also it will transition nicely into low series if we have a nice big freshman player that comes in, but it's not quite yet varsity ready, and we want to get him reps, or JV ready. We want to get him reps in the block or something. So that's kind of how we've introduced it. chin the 5 out. So I don't have a ton on this just because we haven't even toyed with it yet, but this is kind of what you see a lot out of NBA teams too. Not necessarily maybe the drift screen, but more the 5 out concept. So a simple rule would be if the 2-man curls this, let's say the 2-man just curls to the basket but doesn't get it. We'd always teach our screener to do the opposite of the cutter. So if the 2-man was to curl, we would tell the 5-man to pop, because hopefully the 2-man's taking, your defender's going with that curl a little bit, helping a little bit. X1 can't help because you're going to give up a corner 3. So if X2 was to try to chase over that 5-man screen, X5 has to help. So we would release him, and then you're into the 5 out open phase. And there are a billion actions you can run. A couple of them, you could run a dribble at back cut, which we already kind of incorporate in our stuff. Dribble that back cut towards the 4-man and hand it off with the 1. You could double back cut. You see that a lot out of Richmond. They will get into their open phase, back cut the 4-man, and the 1-man will act as if he's coming off a handoff, and they'll back cut him too. You can run your Chicago action, which is down screen, come off the handoff. And you can also run spin. Kind of a misdirection, and the 5-man comes back the other direction, where the 3-man would back cut and the 2-man would come up. So to me, 5 out is something that we may not tackle until Christmas time, just because I don't want sensory overload with our guys. Even if we were to have every option in, I still feel like you always got a little bit of new blood in every practice to where you want them comfortable with the stuff that you're going to see most of. And to me, that would be point and low series for us.
As I take a look at all of this, and I've had a chance to ask a lot of different questions.
Yes, sir.
And I kind of was jotting down some notes and questions I had as we were going through it. One thing I want to ask that I'm sure will come up with coaches is, are there ways that you can incorporate this offense, and I'm sure there probably are, when you see zone defenses, because you're working on some of these different actions within the offense? Are there ways that you've thought about, or that teams have successfully incorporated some of the Princeton principles against teams that play some zone?
So listen to Coach Wellman's podcast for Nebraska Westland, that they run a completely different zone offense. And then talking to Coach V out in Pennsylvania, he runs a completely different zone offense. But our goal is going to be to basically run chin against an even front zone. And it may not be a back screen, fade screen. It might be more of an interference screen into a ball screen, but we're still going to get that same overload that we want, that you see with traditional, screen to top guy of a zone type deal. We are looking at trying to modify it to work a little better against a 3-2 zone. And then for a 1-3-1, just our last coaching meeting, we were actually talking about this. We've come up with your more traditional 2-guard front. We'll maybe look like chin, but trying to fade screen, ball screen out of a 1-3-1 on paper anyways, looks a little more difficult. So, but yeah, we want to incorporate some of those Princeton principles that we use within our offense.
Yeah, I feel like some of those principles with some of the screening and some of the cuts that you make through the paint can lend themselves nicely to going against the zone. So I'll be curious, we might have to follow up down the road and just talk a little bit more about that as you utilize some of the chin series against the zone and kind of how that works out for you guys. So I do, just looking at it, I see that it could lend itself nicely, especially against some of those even front 2-3 zone, like you had mentioned. So just thinking about this offense as a whole and everything that you know about it, you gave us intricate details. I was asking follow-up questions thinking, if I was a coach and I was watching this, what more would I want to know? What scenario could pop up that I might want an answer to? So I feel like you gave us like a really extensive breakdown of
Thank
the
you.
offense, the basics, and then some follow-up questions that you may or may not have seen happen with your team yet, but how you would respond to it. And there's just so many counteractions. Just loving this offense even more after having a chance to listen to you talk about it. So I wanted to ask, as coaches are watching this and they're saying, you know what, I feel like I want to incorporate the point series with my team, or I want to incorporate chin, or I want to start to build in some of these Princeton offense principles. What advice do you have for them? I know that you're relatively new to it. You started using it last year. So what's been the most helpful piece of advice that you maybe have gotten from another coach, or that just through your own experience that you would share with coaches who are watching this thinking about using it?
For me, through our experience with it, is we started at 5 versus 0. And typically we run with our higher IQ guys to start with and spend maybe 15, 20 minutes actually talking through it. I know a lot of coaches maybe think that's too long or what, but again, making sure I'm able to put some terminology out there so when guys know what's going on, or we start to get into the flow of things, and I'm yelling some things like seesaw or spin or go away. They know those terms. And then we do a lot of, like we did with the SSG stuff, we do a lot of 3-on-3 first. Let's learn the primary actions within the ball itself before we introduce the weak side defenders. And then finally, just be a film junkie. Record your practices, record your games, get tunnel vision on what you want, because again, even in the Princeton, you can throw 100 variations out there that would make sense and work, but really narrow down to what you want to run with the point series or the low series, and then just study your own practice film, see the mistakes that you make, see the spacing mistakes you make. And then if you get an opportunity to get in contact with a guy that's run Princeton a ton himself before, by all means do it, and ask questions off of them. Again, we're excited. Next week we get to have a Zoom meeting with Coach Wellman at Nebraska Wesleyan. After listening to this podcast, it kind of sounds like we have the same terminology and structure, but to be able to ask someone that's had a ton of success at it, scoring and winning national championships, it would be cool to hear maybe some of the finer details of it, if you will. So
thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today. As I mentioned, I feel like this was a treat for me because I had a lot of questions about the offense, and I was able to ask some follow-up questions and really dive deeply into the offense and some of the adjustments that you might make with your team as defenses adjust as well. If coaches want to reach out to you just one more time, see your contact information up here on the screen, what's the best way to connect with you?
Honestly, through Twitter, if you send me a little DM, or you could at me on the social media, I'll get with you. I check my email daily, but as we all know, hundreds of emails come in through different sites on Gmail stuff, so I don't get on it a ton. But by all means, I'm willing to share anything that is my own material and what I'm comfortable sharing. And if there's something that people want more that maybe I've got directly from somebody, I'm willing to maybe connect those dots and make that happen for them too. So, but all means, I would love to keep talking it. We could go for days and days and days and never get bored. So this is what we do.
Absolutely, Coach. And I appreciate you taking the time to share with us tonight. If coaches enjoyed this video, I hope that they do reach out to you. And also, I hope that you will subscribe to my YouTube channel, turn on your notifications, like this video, leave a comment below. Love to hear what you're doing with the Princeton offense, or what you took away from this session with Coach Brumbelow. As I noted, it was a treat for me to be able to go through the offense and kind of one-on-one with the coach and learn firsthand. So thank you again, Coach. Really appreciate your time. And best of luck this season using the Princeton offense, but with everything that you do, I know you guys are going to have a lot of success because you definitely do a great job.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.